Right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Nudist Colony of the Dead from Nudist Colony of the Dead. So Brad, what do you think about that song?
Of Nudist Colony of the Dead, or the song, it's got kind of a kickin' soundtrack. Especially when you go into that movie not knowing it's going to be a musical, and then they start like rapping about zombies, and it's like, oh well, this movie's going to be probably 20 minutes longer than it needs to be.
Now, out of all of them that you've reviewed from the Cinema Snob, from the cinemasnob.com, I should say, was this the only one that had a religious musical theme to it?
It's a religious musical theme? Yeah, it's not the first one that had a religious theme to it. There was one it's probably even more bizarre than this movie, that I did a while back, called Blood Freak. That was that was about a guy who gets involved with the wrong crowd. He starts smoking the marijuana, and he ends up taking the wrong stuff, and he eats this scientific turkey from this lab, and like a lot of drugs did in the 1960s, it turns his head into a giant turkey. So his head's a giant turkey. He goes around killing drug dealers and such, but then at the end he's saved by the power of the Lord. So it's got a message, anti-drug, pro-Jesus, killer turkey movie.
All right. And that's different than blood-sucking freaks, correct?
There wasn't a lot of religious symbolism in that one. There might have been a cross somewhere in there, but I'm sure it was used in different contexts. Yeah, that was, oh man, I remember sitting there when I was writing the review for that, and when I sit there and watch these movies, I have my paper, my pen with me, and I'm sitting there taking notes in it. My wife comes walking through, and she's of course used to me watching all these movies, but Bloodsucking Freaks is significantly darker and a little, I don't know if disturbing's the right word, but it's certainly seedier. So there's all this S&M stuff going on in it, and it's like a caning or something. I don't know, something weird. I think someone was like getting stretched, and she kind of passes by the room. She looks at it and she's like, gosh, honey. I'm like, what? Of course, it looked worse. I'm sitting there taking notes on it. Like, don't worry, honey. This is to save our marriage. I'm picking up tips, honey.
Did she by chance see the straw scene from that film?
I don't think so. She doesn't watch the movies with me. She doesn't watch the movie. She tried to when we first started dating. When we first started dating, it was around when I did Frankenstein Island. It was around when I did Frankenstein Island. She sat there and she watched that with me, and was just so not into it. Granted, that's probably one of the worst ones I've done. She wasn't into it at all. At one point, she's kind of like, I feel like I'm bothering you at work. This is literally what she said to me. And so she's not much into exploitation. But there are some that she liked to watch. Like, she's a big fan of like shark movies, so she loves like Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws. She loved watching that with me.
What about Mega Shark?
She liked Mega Shark a lot. Yeah, she was there when I watched Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, which I didn't do that one for the show. I just watched that one for fun.
All right, folks, we need to take a song break, and this next song was a good song in a bad movie. It's from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Turtles in Time. It's Tarzan Boy.
Oh, yes.
Here on 88.3 The Dog. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to WIUS-FM Macomb. You are in the Elephant Room with the J-Man, and Brad Jones, the Cinema Snob, is here with us, and we were just talking about how Casey Jones from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 and 3 is a serial killer in every other movie.
Yeah, he's Elias Koteas. He's either that or he's like a pervert, like in Crash, the James Spader version.
I believe he was also a serial killer in CSI New York because he captured.
Oh, I would imagine.
Captured, Gary Sinise's character.
I've been seeing him pop up quite a bit lately. He's very briefly in Shutter Island. he and Jackie Earl Haley both have like 1 minute cameos in it, and and he was in that awful The Fourth Kind, which is
Yeah.
like his worst movie since Turtles 3.
Now, bringing up The Fourth Kind, I believe there's also a movie out by Asylum Video. I believe it's called The Fourth Experience.
Is there really?
No,
Oh,
I thought you watched one.
No, there was one. Oh, maybe there is one for The Fourth Kind, but there was one for Paranormal Activity.
That's what it was. Paranormal.
There was
Activity.
Paranormal Entity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Paranormal Entity. Paranormal Entity was I genuinely kind of liked that movie. It was fun. It was kind of creepy.
And with Asylum, they do release. Are they considered parody movies or ripoffs or? Yes.
Well, they're not parody. Rip-offs. Sometimes when you watch one, really the only thing that it's kind of ripping off is the title. Because take for instance like I Am Omega. I Am Omega, it's
Right.
I Am Legend, Omega Man. Then when you sit down and watch the movie, it is about a guy who is like the last man on Earth, or at least in the area that he's in. But they never hit like the same beats that the movies that they're ripping off do. Like Snakes on a Train. There are snakes, they're on a train, but there's no one copying like the Samuel L. Jackson line in the movie. There's no one. It doesn't even have the same plot. Honestly, it's about this witch that's on board a train and unleashes all of these snakes. It's a disease that's called snake, and the woman's a witch, so she vomits up snakes, and they get loose on the train. So I guess like they are like kind of like what Bruno Mattei did, back in the day. Where they're rip-offs, but some of them hit a little different beats. Asylum more so than Bruno Mattei. Sometimes he just straight out copied some movies, but I enjoy the Asylum.
Speaking of Bruno Mattei, you have a Bruno Mattei show where you
Yes.
and 4 guests get together and have a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, that's a show that we really really love doing. And when I created that show, it was at a time when I had 2 shows on the site that guaranteed would bring in a lot of hits, like the Cinema Snob, the Big Box, and me sitting there reviewing like current movies. So with that, I was able to create one that is pretty niche and like wouldn't get as many hits, like would cater to a very specific audience. And so we created the Bruno Mattei show, where me and my friends Brian and Sarah were on all the episodes, and sometimes we have a guest, like Ed Glazer was on the Hell of the Living Dead episode, where we talk about each individual movie in Bruno's filmography from earliest to recent. So we're going in order because no one really does that with this director, actually sitting there and having a conversation about these movies. Usually when you see a review for his, it's very comedic, I've done the Cinema Snob, a couple episodes on him. Bruno's Terminator 2 and Jaws 5. I did Cinema Snob episodes for. So we wanted to make it look, we wanted the look for it to look just like that you would not expect something called the Bruno Mattei show to look like. In that the show we do, it's in black and white. We're filming it, at a round table in a bar, and very, kind of lush black and white photography on it. We're dressed in suits, and drinking some scotch and talking Bruno Mattei. It's a very classy way to discuss his movies.
With Bruno Mattei, you mentioned Bruno Mattei's Terminator 2, which the listeners should know is not a version of Terminator 2, but Aliens.
Yeah, it's a ripoff of Aliens. Hits a lot of the same chords as Aliens, and then towards the end it starts getting into Terminator territory a little bit, but it's fun. The movie is a lot of fun. And if you like those rip-off kind of movies like I do, and if you're a fan of him like I am, it's got just far out dialogue that I probably couldn't repeat here, but very, very intentionally overacted. And honestly, it's a very dark movie. Visually, it's very grungy looking, very dark, and it really works. I mean, man, it looks darker than even Aliens does.
Speaking of ripoffs of Terminators specifically, there's also one done by, oh, I can't think of who it is, but I think it's Lady Terminator.
Lady Terminator, that was great. Before I did Ricky O on the Snob, I would have said that probably the best movie, because I like a lot of the movies I do on there. I would have said that the best one that I've done on there would have been Lady Terminator. What's interesting about Lady Terminator is that it sorry, I'm turning my phone off. Was that it is exactly like the Terminator. It does almost the exact same things. A lot of the same lines, same like police station shootout, her getting her clothes, the leather outfit, beating up the street punks. But it does this, and you could watch this movie and feel like you've watched The Terminator because it's so much like it. But it's so interesting what they do in that they make it just like The Terminator, but it doesn't have robots in it. She's possessed by like the South Seas Queen or something like that, which makes her cyborg like apparently. So that's very funny that they do that, and it does not have a robot in sight in the movie.
All right, well, when we come back from this next song, we will be talking about two other very, very famous ripoffs.
Sweet.
And right now, we have a song from Friday the 13th, part 4. It's by Alice Cooper. And
6.
Part 6. It's Alice Cooper's He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask, here on 88.3 The Dog. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask from Friday the 13th, part 6. Almost said Nightmare on Elm Street. But we're here with Brad Jones, the Cinema Snob. We're talking, we're having a good time. And one of the questions I got asked to ask you.
Yeah.
Turkish Star Wars?
Turkish Star Wars? You seen Turkish Star Wars? Oh, it's Turkish Star Wars is amazing. I love that movie so much. Yeah, Turkish Star Wars, where they use stock footage from Star Wars to play on or I think it's just a giant monitor actually behind some of the actors who are supposed to be out in space fighting. But it's funny because they're using the stock footage from Star Wars, so there are cuts in it. So behind them, like the actors are all like saying dialogue and everything, like a live like one shot, but then behind them there's all these cuts and stuff going on. It's like, are they warp driving here or teleporting? What's going on? And it's so funny because they use all this stock footage from Star Wars, but they use the Indiana Jones theme. It's fantastic. Actually, I watched one over at my friend Ed Glazer's place last weekend, which was a Turkish spaghetti western that it was all like in kind of a sepia tone. It looked watching the movie, it looked sort of like in every haunted house movie where they find like an 8mm reel of film from like the previous family, that's kind of what most of it looked like. But it used all like the Ennio Morricone music and everything. Like the guy had a poncho and it was pretty fun. But yeah, Turkish Star Wars is a delight. It is light years beyond Brazilian Star Wars, which was just torture.
That's what I was going to say. Turkish Star Wars versus Brazilian Star Wars.
Well, the thing about Turkish Star Wars is that really, like, it just uses the stock footage. When you really break it down by plot, it's nothing like Star Wars. Brazilian Star Wars, though, is like Brazil's answer to like the Three Stooges meet Hercules. It's this comedy troupe called the Tramps that were very big in Brazil. I actually remember I got a lot of heat when I did the Brazilian Star Wars episode because I'm knocking the Tramps and they're like, "You don't understand. The Tramps, you're stepping on my childhood, man." It's like, I'm sorry. They're like, they said I should have done more research or something like that, which I'm not legitimately reviewing it. It's just me making comedy out of it. So if I was to actually write up a review for it. I might have done a little more research, but I'll tell you this: the review might have been exactly the same. But yeah, so that is actually spoofing Star Wars horribly. Except there's one pretty funny part where Chewbacca is sitting on like a pile of dead soldiers and he's smoking a cigarette. That was kind of funny. But the movie was it was like 2 hours long and just oh man, it was horrible. It was just terrible. Oh, these poor people in Brazil had to watch this.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of not storyline wise, but just out there-ness of Monkey with 72 Magic and the Steel Hands.
A little bit. I can see that. Yeah, because it uses all of that like redoing takes and fast motion and speeding it up, and I can see that. Yeah, it was like Monkey with 72 Magic and War of the Wizards, I think, is the other one that I did that had Richard Keel in it.
I did not even know this, but I think you coined an actual new term, which is Keelsploitation.
Keelsploitation. That would be like the second term that I coined, like that, and I can't say the full one, but shot on on
Which, speaking of that brings me to the next segment, which is you have reviewed 4 films starring the same actress. All of them are stock footage of the original, and that would be Criminally Insane.
Yeah.
Crazy Fat Ethel 2.
Crazy Fat Ethel 2. I surprisingly, and I always forget this, surprisingly, I've never done Criminally Insane, but I feel like I have. Because, Crazy Fat Ethel 2, Death Nurse, and Death Nurse 2 all use the same stock footage from Criminally Insane. I feel like I probably should review Criminally Insane, but I don't know if I need to because it's like I have like 3 times. And there's another one that this guy did. Nick Phillips is the director. Cemetery something is the name of it. Cemetery Sisters or something like that. That he did around the time when he did Death Nurse 2 and like all that. And it uses stock footage from another one of his earlier movies called Satan's Black Wedding. So I gotta track that one down. I should probably do that one sometime. I should do more Nick Phillips movies.
With I think it was Crazy Fat Ethel 2, there was one new scene that I'm pretty sure that I think you documented very well, and it's a guy who got up and made ice cream.
Oh, Death Nurse.
Death Nurse.
Yeah, oh man. The guy just gets up and he spends a couple of minutes, and it feels like longer, scooping out ice cream in a bowl. He has no dialogue in this whole thing. He's just scooping ice cream into a bowl, and every other scoop he's taking out, he's just eating it right off the spoon. So honestly, he only puts about 2 scoops into the bowl, and it's all just from a tablespoon, so it can't be that big. And then they one-up that in Death Nurse 2 with a 5-minute scene of her making tea.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. It's like, how do you pad out a movie that's 60 minutes long and a third of it is already stock footage?
And then, well, actually, we're going to it's time for another music break. We are playing a song that is the theme song to the Cinema Snob.
Nice.
It's The Greatest American Hero. You are listening to 88.3 The Dog. Keep it right here. That was The Greatest American Hero from The Greatest American Hero.
Yeah, a little Joey Scarberry to light up our morning.
Oh, yeah, and we're here with Brad Jones here in the Elephant Room. He is also known as the Cinema Snob, and before we move on to some of the other shows he's done, we're going to talk about Manimal.
Manimal. Professor Jonathan Chase. Young, rich, handsome. The man with the darkest of secrets and the brightest of futures.
So what was your take on Manimal, and how did you first come about finding Manimal?
Oh, Manimal. I mean, I in my youth, I came across it because, I was too young to I was about 2 or 3 years old when it was first on the air. So when it was first on, if I watched it, I don't quite remember it, but then like it would show up again like later, and I would see it when I was a kid. So that stuff I grew up on is 80s television, like that, Automan, TJ Hooker, all of that stuff. Night Court, family ties. So, I love that cheesy 80s action stuff like Manimal, and it's only 8 episodes, was canceled after an 8 episode run, which they just put it in all the wrong time slots possible. I think it was mostly on opposite the Love Boat. It was it was originally on opposite Dallas, and then they moved it opposite the Love Boat, and got crushed by both of them, and end up getting sadly canceled. But it's amazing. If you haven't seen Manimal, it's Simon McCorkindale. Dr. Jonathan Chase has the power to turn into any animal he wants to solve a crime. Mainly, he's turning into a panther or a hawk.
And a shark.
And a shark. A shark twice. And once he turned into a dolphin so he could fight a shark. That was cool. Yeah, he turns into a shark at the end of the pilot episode when the bad guy is in his swimming pool. Jaws theme starts playing, which is pretty funny because McCorkindale was in Jaws 3. Not as the shark, though. And so the guy looks over and Manimal has turned into a shark and he's in the guy's swimming pool, swimming after the guy. And then it ends in like the 80s freeze frame, like executive produced Glenn A. Larson. And so you can only assume that Manimal ate this man. so yeah, I wanted to spotlight it on the website, so I did a video as myself, just doing the top 10 best moments from Manimal, which is incredibly easy to do when it only has 8 episodes.
And I believe Manimal had a spin-off of it, which was Nightman.
Well, yeah, Manimal came back for one episode of Nightman, which was really cool, despite the fact that Nightman is horrible. But it was cool seeing Simon McCorkindale back, and the fact that they played it seriously than you would have thought they probably would have done it, because Manimal, it seems like the kind of thing that if it would be like redone or anything, it'd be a comedy. But they still played it. I mean, it was silly, but they ripped the plot off of Time After Time. Apparently, Manimal has figured out the way to travel through time in this episode, so he goes after Jack the Ripper. So anyway, but they did treat the character very serious, like he had like issues with his daughter and stuff like that. So it was interesting. It was cool to see. You don't see that all the time with canceled television shows, and that was certainly a treat. You know, like I said in the video, though, I mean, the downside to a Manimal Nightman crossover is that it's got Nightman in it, but luckily Manimal was in the episode about as much or maybe even more than Nightman.
And speaking of things of the 80s had lots of things, including big boxes for VHS tapes. So, how did you come up with the idea of the big box and Vic and your wife being the big box model? If you can say that on air.
Oh, sure, why not? That's how I introduce her in public. She loves it. No, so I love VHS. I love big box VHS. I think big box VHS has the best movie artwork you'll probably ever see in your life. So anyway, I wanted, even when I was on YouTube, I wanted to do more than one show, but never really had the time because I was working other jobs back then. And one of the things that I wanted to do was a show that revolved around big box VHSs. I wasn't sure what, but I knew I wanted to do something with it, even if it was just me reviewing it. So anyway, I got the website. I got the cinemasnob.com. And if I was going to have this be essentially my full-time job, which now luckily it's become, I needed more than one show. I couldn't just have the Cinema Snob be on there because I'd only be able to do that about once a week. So I had to sit down and create these new shows. One of the ones I came up with was the big box. I finally sat down and wanted to do that. So at that time, those like ShamWow infomercials had gotten kind of big when I created that, and more specifically Vince from ShamWow. So I started doing kind of a Vince voice, like hey, it's your buddy Vince, stuff like that. So I kind of took that voice and then just elevated that voice to an extreme. It's honestly very kind of stereotypical. Hey, it's your buddy Vic here talking about the big box. So that's where that came from, and I wanted to make it like a sleazy infomercial. So I asked my wife, Jillian, if she wanted to be the big box model. And I wish I could remember in the exact words how I asked her to do this. Like, basically, honey, you'll be standing there smiling, holding a VHS tape. Mostly, I'm going to be filming your cleavage. She's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So that's how that came about. And right away, it got quite a few hits. Go figure. Mostly comments on there like, boobies, it's actually quite a few comments on there. Like, really, like, luckily I'm like completely the opposite of being the jealous type, so I see that and just laugh.
Right.
I mean, most of the comments I can't repeat, but so I just see it and just kind of laugh. At first, Jillian got kind of freaked out, but I guess now she's used to the vast online sexual harassment she's been getting.
Now, there's also a crossover between the Cinema Snob and the Big Box.
Yeah, the Body Shop.
Which was the Body Shop. Mm-hmm. I have a copy known as Dr.
Gore. Gore, yeah. I remember we talked about this the other time because I used to have that on DVD. It was Dr. Gore and it said like AKA the Body Shop. And I don't know what they use it. When I went back to watch it for the show, I watched the VHS version. And the VHS version of it in the big box actually cuts out like when the scene marker pops up on screen. So I actually had to find a Dr. Gore copy so I could show that on that particular episode. And I was like, what? That's a weird thing. Like, they just got this DVD version and put in all of the raw footage? What is this? It's a terrible movie. Really bad.
And I believe the lead was what? Magno the Magnificent, the best magician in like 7 years?
J.G. Patterson did a lot of Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. Yeah, that was, I think he did one other movie after The Body Shop. And I think still with like The Body Shop, I think it might have been like unfinished. Because he died shortly thereafter, but he's a weird cat.
All right, folks, it's time for another break, and I'm gonna have trouble with this one again. You might know. Next up, we have Dream Warriors by Dokken from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. The Dream Warriors. All right. We'll come back with Brad. You're listening to 88.3 The Dog. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dokken with Dream Warriors from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors.
Beautiful and bad.
And we're here with Brad Jones here in the Elephant Room, also known as the Cinema Snob, and Vic from the Big Box, and what we're going to talk about now is Kung Tai Ted. So how did you come up with the...
Ted here.
How did you come up with the idea for Kung Tai Ted and Kung Tai Ted selling out?
I honestly can't remember. How did I come up with Kung Tai? I might have been drunk. I think I intentionally wanted to come up with something that sounded so stupid that why would I do a series on this? So I was thinking in my head, like, what are some of the dumbest ideas that I can think of? And one of the first images that I got in my head was me in a karate outfit talking about like just different martial arts movies, which I love. I love those 70s chop sake movies and like the Godfrey Ho movies and stuff like that. So I was thinking like, that's a really silly idea. That might be kind of funny. And like I said, maybe I was a little drunk. And like I kind of modeled it after videos on YouTube that have someone on there who's teaching martial arts but clearly doesn't really know martial arts, but they're not spoofs, they're genuine. So it's like, that might be kind of an interesting way to go. So I ordered the karate outfit, shot the pilot for it, and at first I was gonna try to do like a Dolph Lundgren kind of voice or something like that for it. But then I settled on, well, actually, it's more appropriate if I'm dubbed. Like, that seems to be more appropriate. So I, based the first episode around one of the greatest fight scenes ever, which is from Godfrey Ho's Undefeatable. Just type in Undefeatable fight scene on YouTube, and you'll get 3 minutes of sheer bliss. So I did that, and it kind of took off a little bit. I thought it was going to be one, because I didn't know there were that many fans out there of all the Godfrey Ho movies and stuff like that. So I thought I was playing to a really, really small audience. But it kind of took off a little bit, and so I was like, okay, well, this seemed to have landed a decent series here. I'll keep going with this, and it's been a lot of fun. It's an easy show to do.
And there was also been a crossover, which I don't know if our listeners have seen it yet or not, but not going to spoil anything for you, but the Cinema Snob and Kung Tai Ted have it out for reasons unknown.
Yeah. I shot that last week. Oh, man, that was a long day of editing. Even when I shot and edited the fight scene one day, and then the review portion the next, that was still a long editing experience. But it was fun, though. We shot the Cinema Snob versus Kung Tai Ted, a big fight scene with an obvious stand-in. My buddy Brian from the Bruno Mattei show was my body double in trading off between sometimes he's the Snob and sometimes he's Ted, and so that was funny, and we had fun doing that, especially my neighbors who live in this shack by the alley. It's the weirdest thing because we live in a very nice neighborhood, but there's like this dilapidated shack by an alley that people live in. So they were watching us, and through their window, like just kind of sitting there, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? That's totally not distracting. And apparently they don't have internet and cable, so that was their must see Thursday night, must see TV for the night.
I was going to say, I noticed when I was watching the video that sometimes there's a full beard on the Snob and sometimes there's barely one, and the hair sometimes gets longer and shorter.
Yeah. In the fight scene. Yeah. It was funnier that Brian kept his beard.
Yeah.
And that he's like he's a little bit taller than I am. Not like the difference between me and, say, like Handsome Tom, but like who's about 3 feet taller than I am, but noticeably taller than me. So that was pretty good. That was fun.
And with I don't remember if this was the Snob or Kung Tai Ted. I was supposed to ask you, how's your knee holding up? Because it looked like it took quite a tumble when you missed that bench.
Oh. For for the Italian Stallion, that was that blooper. I just recently put that blooper up on the site, and that was from a couple of years ago. I should know the exact date that happened, because that happened when Jillian and I got together. It was so I should know the date for this. Let's just say it was like 2008. So what happened was we were reenacting the montage scene from the Italian Stallion, which is the Sylvester Stallone porn. And there's a scene in the Italian Stallion that's very reminiscent of Rocky. Take away the fact that they put in like a soundtrack to it post-Rocky that made it sound like Rocky. There's still a scene of him running through there and doing like putting his hands in the air and stuff like that. And this is like maybe 7 years before Rocky. So he's running through the park. He's like on a jungle gym, and he's hopping across this bench. So when I did the Italian Stallion for the review, I wanted to reenact that for the opening credits. So what happened was I got on this bench, and it was a nice day outside, but there was a little dew left on the bench. I get up there to kind of hop across it and like kind of dance across it and whatnot. I slip, didn't hurt my knee. I slipped down, caught myself on like my elbow and forearm, and kind of caught my fall, but it banged up my shoulder. Is what happened. Like in I wish that Jared, who shot it, kept it rolling at least for like an extra 15 seconds, because what you see in the blooper is me falling off and quickly standing back up and going and laughing and going, cut. What you don't see is immediately after that, when I grab my arm and go, oh, that was real. And then the next take was really painful, because the next take is when I'm climbing up on the ladder to get up to the slide. That was, I could barely lift my arm like over, my shoulder. It was so painful. I didn't break anything, but I mean it certainly hurt. It certainly hurt really bad.
Jared is your cameraman, correct?
Yeah, he's my buddy. He's one of my best friends. He does camera on quite a bit. He does camera for the Bruno Mattei show. He does camera for Kung Tai Ted. When he's busy, Jillian steps in. He shot my movie Game Boys. And he's also with me on a podcast that we do called Radiodrome. He popped up on an episode of the Bruno Mattei show in front of the camera on one. And he was with me on when we reviewed the new Nightmare on Elm Street.
And I believe he also played Candyland with you at one point.
Oh, at our show. Our wow, I completely forgot about that. The show that we do called Brad and Jared. It's like a little 2-minute vignettes of mostly kind of back and forth dialogue. It's all scripted. It's scripted, but it's random. Brad and Jared play Candyland. Brad and Jared find roadkill. Brad and Jared are not cool, I think was one of them, where we're just saying stuff that makes us very uncool. Like, what's the song? Pump Up the Jam starts playing, and I start going like, oh, Space Jam, son!
All right, we need to take a quick not commercial, ladies and gentlemen, quick music break. And these songs are from Revenge of the Nerds 1 and Revenge of the Nerds 2.
Sweet.
Here on 88.3 The Dog. That was from Revenge of the Nerds Part 2 with No on 15.
No on 15.
And if you haven't had a chance to check out Revenge of the Nerds 1 or 2, 1 is a classic, 2 is okay.
2 exists.
2 exists. Exactly.
It has its moments.
We're here with Brad Jones here in the Elephant Room, and we're having a good time talking about good films, bad films,
and the ugly films,
and
like
the
Death
ugly
Nurse.
films, like Death Nurse. And one of them that I'm surprised the Snob has not reviewed was done by Troma, which I'm wondering if that's because of the incident that happened with Mother's Day and Lloyd Kaufman's brother is why you haven't touched it.
I've done Troma movies since then.
Okay.
The Troma movies, really, Mother's Day is the only one that I did that had any sort of direct involvement with Lloyd Kaufman, and that his brother wrote it and directed it. The other Troma movies that I've done are ones that they just distributed, like Bloodsucking Freaks and like Curse of the Cannibal Confederates and stuff like that. But I'd do another Troma. I would do the Toxic Avenger sequels. 2 and 3.
2 and 3, yeah.
I do those.
And because I was going to ask about Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead.
I loved that movie. I loved that movie so much. It would make for my cutoff point is like 1995.
Oh, okay.
So that one's a little too late for me to do. As the cinema snob, I could do like a review of it like as myself, But yeah, that's kind of 1995 is like my cutoff point. I think the most recent movie that I ever did was Jaws 5, and that was at a release date of like 95. It was probably made earlier than that, but anyway, so I would as far as like Troma movies that like Lloyd had like direct involvement with, I would do the Toxic Avenger sequels. Sometimes it's hard for me to do some, even though some of them I do like. I mean, I have like the utmost love and respect for Lloyd Kaufman. It'd be hard for it could kind of break my heart a little bit even though I'm playing a fictitious character. That's sort of why I did that Universal Soldier review with George Lazenby as myself and not the Snob, because I love George Lazenby so much. I feel terrible doing a Snob video out of it. Even though when you watch the video, it is a Snob
Right.
video. It's just me as myself though. It's scripted like one.
I'm not sure if you had heard this news about Lloyd Kaufman and Troma, but Toxic Avenger is being remade as a PG film,
Ugh. So
And-
it's based on the cartoon series.
and Poultrygeist is being remade.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that movie? 5 minutes old?
Yeah, exactly.
I loved Poultrygeist. That was fun. I really liked that a lot. Oh man. Oh, I don't like the sound of this Toxic Avenger thing at all. Oh, that's gonna anger me so much. If it's PG, I'm not gonna see it. I'm gonna refuse to see it. The first one's one of my favorite movies of all time. I would put that in my top 10 favorite movies. No, I didn't even like the cartoon series.
And there was also a musical made. I don't know if
I
you
heard
knew
about that. Yeah, I didn't see it. I would like to have seen it, but I didn't check that one out. That might be kind of funny.
That they also said too the crossovers with some of the people in the musical crossed over with Evil Dead the musical, thus tying it into like the ultimate horror musical.
Nice. That's awesome.
But there's also been there's been some Snob videos out there that have gotten controversy from YouTube, and
Yeah.
the one that springs to mind was Nail Gun Massacre.
Nail Gun Massacre got me I'm glad I did Nail Gun Massacre because that started a chain of events that got me my own site and thus now my full-time job. So I did Nail Gun Massacre, which is one of the worst slasher movies of the 1980s. So I do Nail Gun Massacre. I'm sitting there making fun of Nail Gun Massacre. And then I actually heard from one of the actors in the movie. Oh, man. I wish I could remember what part he told me what part he played, and I remembered it, but this has been a little while. So I think he was the one who got, like, his hands nailed to the tree. But anyway, I heard from him, and he thought it was great. Like, he thought the video was hilarious. Like, gave me compliments and everything. And then a couple months go by, and I see that I've been taken off of YouTube, and it's because of complaints from somebody involved with Nail Gun Massacre. I was never sure if it was the DVD company or if it was the director or the production company that actually made it. I was never sure, but it was someone involved with Nail Gun Massacre. Didn't much care for that, so they complained, and YouTube took it down. I appealed, got it back on, but then right after that, Spoonie had given me the advice to just start my own site. So I did. Started my own site. Thankfully, now it's great because I don't have like a time limit on my videos now, so I can actually. My writing process was a lot different before. But when I was on YouTube, there was at first there was a 10-minute time limit, and then there was an 11-minute. I could never really sit there and take a lot of notes on the movies, so I would watch it and then write a review for it. If I took a bunch of notes, the review would be overwritten. It'd be too long. I never wanted to split a review up into two parts. So I would just watch the movie and then write a video on it. And I have a pretty decent short-term memory, so I certainly remembered everything about the movies. But, now it's much better. I have no time limit. I can sit there and write notes and write down jokes that I would probably forget if I'm just sitting there watching it and then writing it. So yeah, now thankfully, yeah, I can pretty much do whatever. I have more freedom now on Blip than YouTube.
And it's been shut down, 4 times or something?
It got shut down once because of I put up. This wasn't even one of my videos. It was a video that my friend did where he took a movie about Jesus and overdubbed it with his own dialogue. It was very funny, absolutely hysterical. So I put it up on the site, and on the YouTube page. The company that released this Jesus movie, they were less than thrilled. So they complained and took it down, and and I got taken down from that, so I appealed it, came back on. Then a couple of years later, the Nail Gun Massacre thing happened, appealed it, got it back on, but then just used the site just to promote my website. Like I would put up trailers for the movies that I would do on the cinemasnob.com. Then it got taken out again because of the Lady Terminator people. Again, I actually think it was the actual Indonesian company this time that complained about it and not the DVD company. So I at that point I'm like, you know what? I'm not really doing anything with this site now. Just putting clips for movies I'm reviewing. Whatever. I don't. You know, if anything, you know, now more people will see the videos on my site instead of them all being on YouTube. So I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. And then it got turned back on. So I was actually kind of annoyed. So I had to go through and privatize like all of these full Snob episodes. So now I just use it to, like, for instance, when I just did Ricky O. You know, I just pop up a clip of Ricky O on YouTube and put a link to my site. That's what I use it. That's what I use it for now.
With Ricky O, though, there are really bad inconsistencies.
Ricky O is, oh man, Ricky O's great. I love that movie. Oh yeah, the total inconsistencies and everything with the character and what hurts him, what doesn't, what he can break through, what he can't. But it's still just a blast of a movie to watch. It's like I said, it's the best movie I've ever done on the Cinema Snob. This is actually kind of weird writing a review for it because I'm like, this is actually kind of a decent movie.
Did you have to sit through it twice though? Because Kung Tai Ted reviewed it.
No. Well, Kung Tai Ted is easy to write for because I'm only talking about one specific scene from the movie.
Oh, okay.
Where what Kung Tai Ted does is he does run-throughs on individual fight scenes, and saying like, well, this move is called the Stink Pit. This move, it's all stuff I'm making up off the top of my head. This is called the Brucifixion technique. And so he's like sort of doing like play-by-play how-tos on these fight scenes in the movie. So I never have to watch the entire movie. But all of them I've seen before. Right. But so what I have to do is I just sit there, I watch the fight scene, and it's almost like writing like a riff tracks, you know, writing like, just kind of little anecdotes about the fight scene and stuff that I can sort of crack a joke at, make fun of. So with Kung Tai Ted, it's easier to write for. So when I wrote the Kung Tai Ted episode for Ricky O, I just watched those two fight scenes and just made fun of those individual scenes. Watching it on the Snob is different. I watched the entire movie.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to WIUS FM, Macomb, Illinois, 88.3 The Dog. And we are here talking with Brad Jones, the Cinema Snob.
Yes.
And before we get going and take off or whatever, he has reviewed the most interesting horror film of recent memory with The Human Centipede.
Actually spent the $7 to watch it on digital cable. Like, I don't think this will be coming to a theater anytime soon here. I'll just watch it on demand. Why not? Sat through that thing. I had gotten a lot of emails asking what I thought of the movie, and so even hearing the synopsis for it, I'm like, I gotta, or whether or not I review it on the site, I've gotta see this. How much of the plot can I really say?
Just the human centipede part, I'm pretty sure.
It's a mad scientist he's a German mad scientist, makes a human centipede in the grossest way possible.
I remember I was watching your review of that because it was posted like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And all I could see was him doing actions that reminded me straight out of like Scary Movie 4 when all you hear no dialogue, just this woman going like this and doing all these weird hand gestures and motions.
Yeah.
And the clip that is on his blip before you play it is a still frame of both his hands up in the air like he's jumping up and down.
That was the still shot that Blip randomly picked to put on there. Sometimes I have to just pick a frame myself and put on there to use as a thumbnail, but that was the one that they automatically picked. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. But the human centipede, like I really treated that review for it. Essentially, it's basically me doing a stand-up comedy routine. Honestly, me sitting there talking about the Human Centipede, and I mean, there was no way I could talk about that movie with a straight face. So like, it's got to be as silly and as smart alecky as possible in this. So it got quite a few comments on that one. It's original. It's a very original movie. The Human Centipede is. Like I said, I still feel slightly disturbed that I found a lot of it to be humorous. I hope to God that that's what they intended, for it to be kind of a dark comedy. But regardless of that, it's good. It's decent. I kind of like the Human Centipede.
All right, well, we're going to take a music break and then come back. And right now, this is from a movie that does not star Gene Simmons, nor does it star Ozzy Osbourne. It's Fastway with Trick or Treat here on 88.3. That was Fastway with Trick or Treat, which is a movie that I purchased because I thought it starred Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne.
They're in it for a good 30 seconds.
But what is your take on the movie Trick or Treat starring Skippy?
I watched Skippy from Family Ties. Oh, yeah. I watched this movie shortly after it came out on DVD because it's one of those that went right to the $4 bin. My friend, a buddy of mine, bought it, and we sat there and watched it, and it was like a lot of this is why I love 80s horror and slasher movies so much, is that even when you got one that's really bad like that, it was like you just said, interesting story, but really stupid. It's still very watchable. I mean, bad horror movies nowadays are just when you got something like Sorority Row or all this
Platinum Dunes.
Platinum Dunes, I don't think is nearly as bad as its reputation is, because Platinum Dunes isn't good, but they're not offensively bad. They're not like PG-13 Prom Night.
That's true.
PG-13 Prom Night, PG-13 Stepfather. At least with Platinum Dunes, and I'm not saying that they're any good, at least with Platinum Dunes, you're at least going to get a horror film. You're going to get a slasher film. It's going to have blood and guts in it. And, you are going to see a slasher film that is violent, and like Friday the 13th has a lot of nudity in it. They're just very forgettable, is my problem with it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th remake. They're not horrible movies. They're just
there.
Yeah, exactly. They just exist. They just kind of do nothing. The Nightmare on Elm Street one is the first one of theirs that I did that I genuinely really, really like. And I kind of liked Amityville Horror, mainly for Ryan Reynolds. I thought he was great in it. I thought he was pretty creepy in that movie, actually. But the new Nightmare on Elm Street, I really liked that movie a lot.
What I liked about the new Nightmare on Elm Street was they did cherry pick the best scenes from the original franchise. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what they did was they also altered it a bit.
Yeah.
Like when Freddy comes out above the bed in the original one, this is altered a little bit.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen, but it only happens to an extent, and it's not the whole actual remake.
I think if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to redo something that was in the original, I never like it when that happens because I always find it incredibly distracting. I think that when that happens in remakes, it just takes away from the movie, and I just don't like that. But in this one, if you're going to do that, they did it okay because of the reason you just said. They did put their own little spin on it, and when they did redo something from the original, it was very few in between. Right. It didn't happen a lot, but like I said, I was never a fan of like the goofy clown wisecracking Freddy Krueger. I've still seen him a bunch of times, but that wasn't my thing. I mean, I was always more of a Jason fan anyway. But anyway, so the fact that this movie brought it back, to being not only really dark,
Right.
but honestly even darker than the first
Oh,
one.
yeah.
It's not as good as the first one. The first one, of course the first one's better. But this one, this is the kind of Nightmare on Elm Street movie that I've wanted since 1985.
Right.
It's yes, it's flawed. It's flawed. It's not perfect, but considering who made it,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a genuinely creepy movie. I thought that they did a lot of neat things with it, especially with Freddy's backstory and everything. It took a very kind of disturbing and creepy twist on it. And Jackie Earle Haley was amazing in it. He was fantastic. I want to see more of these movies with Jackie Earle as Freddy, as long as they don't turn it into a comedy like they did with the previous series. But you know, and I've been going back and forth with one of my best friends, Chris, went to go see it, and he was on Twitter yesterday just nitpicking it like crazy. Like, oh, what? Oh, Nancy's house looks different. Boo, 0 stars. And then like, what else did he say? He was angry that that they use kind of blurry edges around some of the dream sequences. I took Jillian to go see it last night. That happens like 3 times in the movie. Only 3. I'm not talking about 3 dream sequences. I'm talking 3 shots that happens. So that roughly 15 seconds that happens in this movie. So he was saying something like, "How come all the parents are all single?" Like, dude, you're just you want my shovel? Here, I'll give you a shovel, a fishing rod, and some Kleenex. Have fun.
The only problem I really had with it was they claimed Freddy's makeup was based on that of an actual burn victim.
I can see it.
I could too, but I agree with Angry Joe, who is another member of that guy
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the glasses,
yeah.
where he looked kind of like a Navi.
He did. A little bit. Yeah.
To an extent. And,
Yeah, he did. They didn't bother me. I liked how he looked at it. I thought, sure, he did look a little, but I mean, you know, that's
right.
It's more realistic looking than the makeup has been in the past.
True, and the other thing.
Not saying it's better, but it's more realistic.
The other thing that bugged me and a couple of my friends who went to see it was the gardening tool and the gardening tool thing. I'm not going to say what it is, but the gardening tool thing just
Then the flashback.
Yeah.
That was I didn't have a problem with that. I gotta talk about this. My good friend Ed Glazer. He put up a review for it on his Facebook. Honestly, it's the best negative review that I've read on it, in that he genuinely wanted to like it. I mean, he just didn't, you know. He wasn't like my friend Chris, who went in there wanting to shotgun blast everything he saw on the screen. But anyway, it's the best opening sentence I've ever read in a review ever, which was, "I have to respectfully disagree with my good friend and colleague Brad Joe." Like I remember one of his complaints was like all the jump scares in it.
Yeah.
Which I agree with him on. There was a lot of jump scares in it, and I kind of ignored it after a while. What angers me more, because at least in this movie, and yeah, there were too many. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie; it's flawed. Right. The thing with the kid on the webcam was stupid. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. But it didn't ruin the movie for me. It still had enough good stuff in it. The jump scares. At least what annoys me more than just a simple jump scare is when it's a false jump scare, when it's like a cat or something like that. This movie didn't have a lot of that. There were a lot of jump scares, but about 90% of the time it actually was Freddy. I can think of one where it was the kid who was knocking on the girl's window, and it did a jump scare in that. That's like one of the only times I can think of where it was a false one. At least the other times it was Freddy Krueger, and they did do it too much, but it didn't annoy me as like a false jump scare, and I kind of ignored it. It had enough other creepy stuff in it that I could look past that.
And with this being a remake, I know there was, I think you brought this up with Jared in your review of it, and I can't remember what it was now. It was what was it? About the backstory for Freddy.
Yeah.
How they performed that whole backstory, because in the trailer it shows part of this scene. And it
with everything I did, I didn't do anything.
And it looked extremely hokey.
Yeah.
And the way they pulled it off, I just went, oh, now it makes sense.
Oh, you talking about when he takes off
when
his jacket? It makes sense when you see it in the movie, and because it's all from the point of view of a dream sequence. So maybe that's not exactly how that happened in when it happened in quote unquote real life in the movie. So it's a little less hokey when you see it in the trailer, and he rips off his jacket and he's got the sweater and he's like Superman all of a sudden. But Jackie Earle was just amazing. I mean, his take on this character is worth it for the ticket price alone.
Oh yeah.
So I hope that they do more. I mean, it's Platinum Dunes, and they tend to only make like one movie, and then that's it. So I hope they make more. They did make that second Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but
and Hitcher.
No, they just made one Hitcher.
Oh, I thought they made Hitcher Part 2. That's the original.
Yeah, there is a sequel to the original, which is awful. The original Hitcher is a masterpiece, but like Hitcher 2 and the remake are terrible. I don't know which one's worse. But they made that second Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was the same exact movie as the first one, so it didn't matter.
And then with Friday the 13th and the new Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street is supposedly been greenlit to do one in 3D.
Oh, of course it is.
And Jackie Earle has signed on to do 2 sequels.
Good. That's awesome.
I'm hoping that the new Nightmare 2, if that sounds right, the new Nightmare 2 will take some liberties with Nightmare 2 Freddy's Revenge.
I would. Oh man. I was probably a little. I could imagine myself probably nitpicking that, unfortunately, because Elm Street 2 Freddy's Revenge was my favorite. But I was maybe when I did that review with Jared, I was maybe a little harsh towards people who would nitpick it. I mean, when you're sitting there doing an ad lib 20-30 minute review, you know, you're gonna say some stuff that might come across as being a little harsh.
Yeah.
But one thing is that I mean, like me and my friend Chris went back and forth when him nitpicking it, but I understand.
Right.
I get it. You know, if A Nightmare on Elm Street was my favorite horror film of all time, and it's one of my favorites, the original, it isn't like number one or anything. But, okay, a good example, my favorite horror film of all time is Dawn of the Dead. George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. I hate the remake. I hate it. I nitpick that like crazy. I think it's like a Helmet Child version of the original. I think that the DVD for that needs to be chained to a jungle gym. So anyway, I nitpick that like crazy. So I get it. Right. I get why, you know, that someone would not like which in the review I had just come from seeing the movie. So in the review Jared and I gave, I said something like I said there's no reason why fans of the first two shouldn't like this, which in retrospect isn't true. If it's your favorite horror film of all time, I get it why you nitpick this like crazy.
All right, well,
but stepping back from it, you know,
yes.
it is an excellent horror film.
All right, well, we will take another music break, and here is the Fat Boys from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Master. Was that 5?
The Dream Child.
Dream Child, here on 88.3 The Dog. All right, that was Are You Ready for Freddy by the Fat Boys from Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. We're here with Brad Jones here in the Elephant Room, and we were discussing during the song about how when both of us went to see the new Nightmare on Elm Street remake, there were a lot of children in the audience.
Yeah, and I was just saying that this is probably like the 5th time that I've heard someone say that to me, that I guess this is like the family film of the year or something. I mean, you know, I'm sure it is a better family movie than Furry Vengeance, which opened last weekend. But anyway, so yeah, when we went to go see it Friday opening night, there was a 7-year-old. There was like a 6-7-year-old girl in the audience, and you know, she didn't do anything. It wasn't like she was being annoying, but she was sitting like right behind us. So it's like, well, okay, maybe this is their parents' way of saying don't talk to strangers.
Well, one of the trailers before the film, which I'm guessing is with all of them, or two of them,
Yeah.
two of them were Predators.
Predators.
By Robert Rodriguez, and the other one was a horror film that one of my friends goes, that actually was scarier than the new Nightmare on Elm Street, which was Splice.
Oh, Splice, which looks like Species.
Yeah, you noticed that too.
Yeah, it looks like it reminded me like Jillian. Both Jillian and I were thinking of Species, and then it was mainly reminding me of. Have you ever seen a Rock Hudson movie from the 1970s called Embryo?
Yes.
It reminded me of Embryo a little bit, except in Embryo the girl looked human, and in this one she looks like a rat.
A rat, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go see Splice for the site. I don't know. I'm looking forward to Predators. Predators looks cool.
I am too. I was gonna say one of the kids who went to see it was sitting there, and when the guy gets lit up by those 3 lights, he goes, "Oh no, dude's gonna get it!" And then the trailer like immediately cuts to something else. He goes, "He didn't die, boo."
Boo.
But no, we're sitting here talking with Brad Jones again. Just a reminder, you're listening to 88.3 The Dog. We are streaming live on the web. wiu.edu/The Dog is our address. Click Listen Live. You can listen to us live. And what do you think the worst movie you've ever had to review for the Snob was?
Well, the worst ones to review are ones that are hard to write for, and so it's not necessarily whether or not the movie is, because when I'm sitting there watching it, I'm looking for jokes. I'm not sitting there watching it like taking it. Or like I would if I was in a theater watching it, or if I was just sitting at home just watching it to watch it. I'm sitting there taking notes and looking for jokes and stuff to make fun of. So, so in that regard, the worst I would say is The Stewardesses 3D. That was the hardest one that I had to write for. There was nothing in that movie. Absolutely, I think that movie has like 20 different versions to it. So I believe I watched the worst. So literally nothing happened in that movie. It was just the stewards, they were just flying places to places and like having sex with people. They end up in a harem. There's a rape scene out of nowhere, and I thought this was a comedy. So that was it was hard coming up with stuff to make fun of about that movie. Wow, I'm amazed that I got through writing that episode. As far as which one by movie standard is the worst, it's hard to say that one because, like I said, I watched some rare version of it, so I don't know what the most common version of that movie is like. Oh man, I don't know. Porno Holocaust was awful. That was atrocious. It's hard for me to, like, I'm trying to think of ones beyond the ones that are shot on video because that would seem like too easy of an answer.
What about Troll 4, Quest for the Sword? Or
that was really bad. And I love Troll 2. I love Troll 2. Even Troll 3 Creepers was kind of funny. That Troll 4 Ator one, it was bad. And I like Ator. I like Ator the Invincible and those movies. But that one was... honestly, I thought that the worst Troll movie was the first one. The one that was an actual troll movie. I thought that was by far the worst. I'd rather watch the Ator one than the first Troll movie. That was unbearable. It was easy to write a review for, but it was annoying to sit through that. That little girl, oh my god. It was rough sitting through the first Troll movie. I thought it was by far the worst one to sit through. Troll 2, though, is amazingly hilarious. That is just incredibly entertaining. So porno, I usually say Porno Holocaust when someone asks me what's the worst one to sit through, not necessarily to write to, because it was, well, that was like the second review I ever did, so it wasn't that in-depth of an episode, but if I were to do that episode again, it would be an easy one to write for. So I would say that was probably the worst. It was like 2 hours long, and the first half of it is straight porn. The second half of it gets into the zombie barely when the people aren't running from him and screwing in the walkway.
I was I was kind of surprised that you didn't say Curse of the Cannibal Confederates.
That was bad, but I've seen worse. I've certainly seen a lot worse. That one was really bad.
Because I sent it being a person in the broadcast department, I sent it to my film teacher going, how not to make a movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, on a technical aspect, it's one of the worst I've sat through. But sitting there as a form of entertainment,
Right.
it was really bad, really bad. But I can think of a bunch that are worse. But that's definitely one that I personally don't like.
And it was, I think you pointed this out in the review, and then I caught a clip of it, I think on YouTube, where they're in a basement or a house, and the camera, they're talking, you just hear, and the guy's going. Your comment was, I think the sound guy's up in the attic recording.
Oh,
while they're
that was
downstairs.
Curse of the Cannibal Confederates.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. When they're in the cabin and the girl's talking to him, and it sounds like she's upstairs.
Right.
Oh man, that was bad. And I gotta tell you about this movie. I'm gonna end up doing this one in the future. It's called Daphne's Deadly Revenge. Have you seen this?
No.
Oh, it's on the same box set that Curse of the Cannibal Confederates and Demented Death Farm Massacre in. Okay, Daphne's Deadly Revenge, right? Bills itself up like an I Spit on Your Grave thriller kind of exploitation female revenge movie. The movie starts out, guys are in an RV. They're going like camping to their cabin or something. They pick up a girl. So you're like, okay, here's Daphne. Her name's Candy. Like, okay, oops. So it's about this girl named Candy who is attacked by these guys, or one of them in particular, in the cabin. So you think, well, okay, this is going to be like I Spit on Your Grave, revenge. Here's what happens. She goes back to the city and she sues them for assault. That's the movie. That is the movie.
Wow.
And it like ruins the guys' lives, and one of them like didn't have anything to do with it, and it's like ruining his life too, even though he tried to stop it. But then he and Candy like start up like a romantic relationship, and one of the guys in like the last 15 minutes of it decides to get a hitman to go after Candy.
Right.
To go after Candy to kill her, and then so they're in the woods and they're chasing, and the hitman is like chasing after the hitman, and like the main kind of bad guys chasing after Candy in the woods trying to kill her. All of a sudden this girl comes out of nowhere and attacks the main guy. This girl is this bad guy's ex-girlfriend who he made go insane. Her name is Daphne.
Wow. Wow.
This is it feels like a made-for-TV movie, even though I know it's not, because it does have nudity in it. It does have language in it. It's like, this is the most falsely advertised movie I've ever seen in my life. I've got to do this. I've got to do this on the show. Unfortunately, I'll have to watch it again.
Right.
Because it's been about a year or so since I've seen it. But that was, yeah, give that one a watch if you have a chance.
I Spit on Your Grave, which a lot of people I've heard say that's the first female revenge movie, but that's kind of not, because Last House on the Left.
Well, I wouldn't say that's a female revenge movie, because it's like the parents.
Oh, that's true. It is parents.
But before I Spit on Your Grave, Thriller was before I Spit on Your Grave.
That's true.
Thriller came out before I Spit on Your Grave. So if there were any, I'm sure there were more before Thriller, but I can't think off the top of my head. But like, yeah, there was Thriller. That was my favorite one was Miss 45.
Yeah.
That was after I Spit on Your Grave. I want to say Miss 45 was like 81 or 82. And I Spit on Your Grave. I Spit on Your Grave was, I think, it was originally released in 78 as Day of the Woman, and then got re-released in 80 or 81 as
I Spit on Your Grave, a.k.a. Day of the Woman.
A Day of the Woman.
I
actually went back and watched that again the other day. Sarah from the Bruno Mattei show had never seen it before, so me and Brian sit there and show her I Spit on Your Grave. She liked it.
Good. Switching gears really quick, you did a review of, you did a review for a Bruceploitation film.
Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger?
Yeah, Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger. And I was wondering what your thoughts were, knowing that Spoonie has done Bruceploitation and knowing that James Rolfe just did Bruceploitation films.
Oh, that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Oh, man. I mean, that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, the more the better that gets these movies out there, you know. The more people reviewing them, the better. And Spoonie did a phenomenal job. I mean, he did I think 20 times better than I did on Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger. But I mean, that was back. I was on YouTube.
Right.
And I couldn't really write much about it, as opposed to he had a very in-depth 20-minute video. It's fantastic. That kind of thing doesn't. I mean, I've done when I did Troll 2. When I did Troll 2, it was before I had seen a lot of stuff on That Guy with the Glasses.
Right.
It was before I got picked up on That Guy with the Glasses. I didn't know that I'd never seen the show that Phalis does,
Right.
and now I love it. I think his show is hysterical. I didn't know that he had already done the Troll movie, so by the time I did Troll and then Troll 2,
Yeah.
I remember getting a comment from someone going, "Phalis did it." I'm sitting there like, I don't know what that means. So then I saw that he did them, and I'm like, oh man. So honestly, if I had known that he had, I probably wouldn't
Right.
have done the Troll movies. But it worked out because we collaborated on one of them.
Well,
so
be careful, because if you mess with Mike J, you become a puppet, apparently.
really, oh no.
For one of his reviews, I can't remember which one it was, but somebody else had already did it.
Yeah.
So he just had a sock puppet version of that guy and just had him on his
That's
stick.
great. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I do try. I don't have anything against more than one person reviewing something. I mean, that's,
Right.
you know, you know what? I mean, what Siskel and Ebert were the only ones who reviewed
Right.
movies, but anyway. So, but with that said, I mean, I'm never gonna do Clones of Bruce Lee.
Right.
I'm never gonna do Game of Death now that they've already been probably comedically
Right.
reviewed and whatnot. You know, I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, like if someone did if someone posted up a review for Curse of the Cannibal Confederates,
Right.
I wouldn't care. I'd watch it, and it'd probably be hysterical.
All right. Well, we have to take one last music break, and then we'll come back and say our goodbyes. So from Silence of the Lambs, here's Goodbye Horses by Q
Nice.
Lazarus. All right, that was Q Lazarus with Goodbye Horses here on 88.3. This has been a special Elephant Room. We would like to thank our special guest, Brad Jones, also known as Kung Tai Ted, the cinema snob.
Big bucks of
And
dick.
Big Bucks Vic. And is there anything you would like to plug or promote before we
Just my
kick off?
website. Go to my site. It's me as a snobby critic making fun of exploitation films. www.thecinemasnob.com. And if you like all that old, if you grew up on that stuff like me and you love it like I do, then hopefully you'll get a kick out of it. It's got a bunch of stuff on there, from exploitation horror to kung fu movies to a lot of funny stuff.
All right. Well, we thank you for taking this time out, Brad, and hopefully we will
course.
talk with you again later. And you are listening to 88.3 The Dog.